the historical picture for as long as we know of human life, and as long as we know of human history, as far as human history is concerned, that has been the situation. Now, as far as how to change it to where there's less corruption, I think the world in general, I would say the historical trajectory is that let me think about this for a moment. In many ways, civilized society and the world at large, yes, it still has horrible problems, and there's more people alive today than there ever have been in the past. So there's going to be, when there's a serious catastrophe in any sort, whether it's in human catastrophes, it's going to be at a much larger scale than it ever has been. But I think there's been great arguments made that as far as the moral progress of mankind is concerned, humanity has, over the past several thousand years, gotten better, or gotten to the point where, morally speaking, humanity seems to be moving in the right direction. And I think that is the case, that we are moving in the right direction. The Western world, at least, for instance, the Western world has abolished slavery. There's greater equity among males and females, and, people. There's less oppression in our society. There's less oppression. There's less systematic oppression in first world countries than there ever has been. Now, I don't think that it's just completely everything's getting better and better, though. There could be instances, and I'm sure there are, where certain aspects of life are getting worse, certain aspects of life are getting better, but in general, it seems like the progress of mankind is getting better from a moral viewpoint, and I think that's a great thing. Now, as far as how to speed up that process, or how to achieve that to a greater extent, one thing I think is just, as far as and how that ties in with Socrates or Plato, is that I think one thing could be, I think, and I don't want to get too far off topic, but I think this does sort of play a role, that okay, I'll go ahead and make this statement, even though this is a very loaded statement, and this could spur a lot of off-topic discussion, but I think the education of mankind, the education of children, the education of adults, the education of our species as a whole needs to be much better. And I think there is a great deal of problems with our educational system as it stands now, both in this country and the world. For one thing, classical education has diminished to a very large extent, and classical education was an educational system that was predicated upon reading such things as Plato's dialogues. And I think it's a great loss to the world that the classical educational system that predated John Dewey's ideas of progressive education has almost not entirely, but almost vanished. I think the reading of great books like the dialogues of Plato, helps people to better engage in a way that they have not only their own conscience and their own goodness and everything else, but they have less ignorance, they have a degree of greater understanding or enlightenment, if you will, use a very heavy term. They have a greater degree of understanding and a greater education, and something that's going to prepare them for a very humanistic outlook on life. And I think, a lot of that involves understanding what the great minds of the greatest geniuses that wrote about these issues and these topics and these subjects, to understand what they thought and to engage with them actively, to ask questions of what you're reading, to not just read passively, but to actively engage some of the heaviest hitters as far as intellectually and intellectually speaking is concerned. To think about what the implication, something that a lot of people don't realize is that, I mean, they might realize it with something like the Bible, that, a book can be a very powerful, influential thing on not only a person's life, but on whole societies and on history. And that's true of great books, many great books, not necessarily all of them, and maybe not in every avenue. But when you think of something like The Republic of Plato, which we haven't gotten to, but it's his longest dialogue, it's had much influence. People have reacted against it with what their ideas were, and people have also approved of it in part or in whole. And the whole idea of a utopia, of creating a better society, really started with that book. Maybe not that it started with it, but much of political thought is concerned, or political thinking is concerned, of formulating a society that is going to be more in tune to proper human principles, came from that. And to think about certain ideas like what it is to be good, or what is virtue, or how should a society be constituted. There have been very great minds who have thought in very different camps, and it's good for us, if we want to really think for ourselves, which I think is essential. If we want to think for ourselves, we have to be willing to engage with some of the biggest geniuses, the greatest geniuses to ever think about these issues, and to determine what was right and what was wrong in their teachings, and to really learn to think for ourselves. Because I think, especially for our system of government and democracy, it's absolutely antithetical to a democracy. It's absolutely destructive to a democracy if we have citizens who are incapable of thinking for themselves. It destroys the whole conception of democracy, period. You have to have a populace that is educated, informed, and is capable of thinking for themselves to have a harmonious and functioning democratic system. So, hopefully, I know I went on a long tangent, but hopefully that answered your questions, and hopefully it sort of covered some other topics that were related to it.
Alright, so for the last question, do you, in your own words and opinion, think that Socrates should have ran or shouldn't, and why you think, or do you agree with him as far as it being unjust in which to do so?
Well, for now, I'm going to avoid the question, only because the Crito, which is about that specific situation, is the very next dialogue, so I'll save that response to that for next time.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, I think we have covered this for 42 minutes.
Okay.
I think we've done a great job covering this. I may split this into a 2-part video. Okay. I don't know yet, but hopefully you guys enjoyed. Definitely hit that thumbs up button. And if you enjoy his works as well as mine on the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on them post notifications, and get yourself engaged and prepared for your next, I guess, ideal learning session to increase your knowledge. Guess that's how I would word it.
Okay.
I don't know how you would word it. You'd have more simplistic formality of how to word that, and I don't. So, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. We will see you probably in the next couple hours. I'll be streaming. He's probably just going to finish reading and get into the next dialogue. So, enjoy, guys, and I will definitely have this up probably next hour or so. Depends on how fast YouTube wants to upload. So, enjoy, guys.